Peter Falk is Mikey.
I got a terrific suggestion for you, Nick. I suggest you find somebody you can trust.
John Cassavetes is Nicky.
They're gonna kill me, Nick. They're gonna kill me.
Mikey and Nicky. On a night like this, there are no rules.
You give me that dirty stuff. Did you hear me or I'm today?
No, you fucked it up. No, I fucked it up. Hey, I'm Liam Billingham.
I was pausing for dramatic effect.
Okay.
I'm George Frigopoulos.
And this is an Oeuvre Busters special edition episode.
You're welcome, America.
You're welcome.
We're giving you
Keith.
extra content.
Hey, Keith, it's
if you're
Liam
listening.
and George. We're giving you extra content. George, what extra content are we giving the world?
So today, continuing, obviously, our deep dive into the Cassavetes oeuvre, we are going to talk about not a film that he directed, but a film that he starred in. So this is 1976's Mikey and Nicky. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking it's Mickey.
I thought it was Mickey too.
Of course you are, because you're a normal human being. And I kept saying, I can't wait to watch Mickey and Nicky.
No, but I thought it was Mikey and Nicky, and then there's for half the
No, it
film's
is
running
Mikey
length, they said Mickey.
Did they?
I think so.
No, I think that's just in your head. So this is from
Maybe.
1976.
It's
directed
the
by
first,
Elaine May.
Directed by Elaine May, a genius, and
Well,
maybe
except for Ishtar.
shut up, an unsung. Maybe an unsung presence in the cinema. Listen, here's the thing.
Liam was the last
Here's
man
the
in
thing.
America that
No,
were going
here's
to
my
die
problem with
kill
you.
for Ishtar.
I've never seen Ishtar.
Then you're missing out.
However, I will tell you that we always assign these failures. It's like, Elaine May, it's a lady made a stinker of a movie.
Apparently, yeah, I guess
David Fincher made fucking The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and nobody's given that guy a hard time.
You're right. Elaine May also directed, as we all know, Heaven's Gate, which we all
That's
agree.
Michael Cimino.
Yes, exactly. Point proven. Done.
Oh, so one
And
white
the
guy
pop.
got in trouble for directing a shitty movie.
First of all, she's great. She's brilliant.
She's a genius.
But let's also just point out that Ishtar sucks.
I've not seen it. But maybe we should do an Oeuvre Busters series on Elaine May. I was actually going to propose to you this to you offline.
Propose.
I was going to propose to you.
Offline.
Should we get married?
Yeah, sure. On the podcast?
Yeah.
Keith will definitely be the witness.
You know what'll be great
right?
about
Keith will be the
it
witness.
can kind of be like the opening of Mission Impossible Fallout.
And then we take off
It was
our
like,
masks.
to you,
and
George,
we're
take
the-
Liam, in sickness and in health, and then like the world explodes.
Yeah. And
You should have killed me,
and the priest is
George,
that
but
creepy
it's
guy.
Keith.
Yeah, it's Keith.
Yeah.
Shit.
Apparently, originally that was supposed to be Alec Baldwin, which
that
makes
plays the bad guy?
no that administers their wedding. That makes no fucking sense.
And then he takes off his mask in the dream, and it's that creepy
No, it was supposed
apostle guy?
No, it was supposed to be Sam. His name is something Harris, but no, it was supposed to be Alec Baldwin.
That would make a lot more sense.
No, it makes no sense.
I think so.
It makes sense as the guy that it is in the movie.
So this is Spine 957 on the Criterion Collection. And we should also briefly say, so the reason we're doing an episode also on
our wonderful
Mikey and Nicky.
non-sponsors, the Criterion
Criterion
channel, which we would love, get at us.
Except what are you guys waiting for? We need everything that Theo Angelopoulos made
Oh my God!
on
Can
fucking Criterion.
we go? Have you ever seen The Traveling Players?
No, because I'm a pleb. But
I
I'm,
feel
I'm
bad. So
willing.
earlier in our friendship, we barely knew each other. I went to
we
see
still
that.
barely know each other. This is just a working relationship.
How dare you? I went to see that film at Museum of the Moving Image, and like the film ended, and our mutual friend, who will remain unnamed, was like, "You should have invited George to this," and I was like, "Because he's Greek?" And he was like, "No, he just likes movies," and I
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah, I don't know."
That sounds exactly like something Fennis would say.
Classic Venice.
Classic Fennis.
But that movie's a goddamn masterpiece.
It is a goddamn answer.
Have you seen it?
No, sorry, I haven't seen it. I'm just.
Have you seen his other films?
I have.
Which one?
Ulysses Gaze.
Ulysses Gaze. That's the one with Harvey Keitel.
Correct. Yeah.
It's a very good film.
And Eternity in a Day.
Eternity in a Day I can't find.
Yeah. Brooklyn Public Library. They have a copy.
Get the fuck out.
Yeah, because that's where I've definitely gotten it
So
from the Brooklyn Public Library.
fun story. I got a copy of Traveling Players from the Queen's Library in 2010, and it was PAL.
It was what?
PAL. It was PAL format. It was a VHS tape, PAL
okay.
formatted. So I put it in my NTSC
Of
player,
course, as you
and it wouldn't work. But so anyway,
How
sorry.
does that place stay in business?
Our friends, because it's subsidized and it's an amazing resource and
It
it's a
is.
miracle,
It's
and
a
libraries are amazing and
Tell your librarians that they're,
eviscerate capitalism. Anyway,
that they're angels.
we have a friend that used to work at Brooklyn Public
Yeah.
Library.
This is it's not
She's the
Fennis,
best.
another friend.
Different friend.
Yeah.
So the Criterion channel, which launches April 8th, www.criterion.com.
Give them your money.
Their first movie of the week was Mikey and Nicky, and that's been getting a lot of attention. It's having a moment.
like an undiscovered classic kind of thing.
Yeah, and so we
Rediscovered
felt, and we sort of from a sort of like it's in the air kind of thing. We felt when we saw that it was the movie of the week, we decided we should cover it.
Yeah. So that's what we're doing.
Especially considering it stars Peter Falk and John Cassavetes. So we both watched it this week.
This Cassavetes guy's directed a couple of films. Did you know
Just
that?
one or two.
Just one or two, yeah.
Big Trouble, I think, and Too Late Blues.
Big Trouble in Little China.
So what did you think of the film?
I really enjoyed it.
It was very good.
I had a good time watching it.
Yep.
I wasn't blown away by it, but I really, really enjoyed this film, and I would recommend that people go out and watch it.
I was blown away by moments of it.
Yeah, and again, like obviously, again, like watching these guys act, they're so great. Watching them on screen together as like friends and also frenemies in this kind of particular role, just also kind of was great.
So we should quickly summarize the film. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the summary.
Yeah.
I just would like to talk about it.
Maybe
in a podcast, it's not a great thing to say. I don't want to spend a lot of time on
talking about.
this.
Do you want to quickly do that, or should I do the honors? So, what is this film about? It is Nicky, as played by John Cassavetes, finds himself in trouble.
He's stolen
He's
some
stolen
money.
money from the mob, which is not a good thing to do, and he calls his longtime friend Mikey for assistance to kind of like try to get him out of this obviously delicate situation that he finds himself in, and
He's
basically
holed up in a hotel room.
and the film begins like him holed up in a hotel room, and basically nothing really happens over the next kind of hour and a half. It's very much about them kind of like making their way through the city and talking about how they could possibly maybe save Cassavetes, but all the entire time
Save Nicky.
Yeah, save Nicky. Sorry, Cassavetes. Yeah, Nicky. But the entire time, Falk, Mikey, is really kind of in cahoots with the mob, and is
He's
not
working
actually,
for Dave Resnick.
Yeah, is not actually trying.
Who's the name of the mob boss?
Really help him. It seems at some point maybe he is trying to help him, but he's in fact not trying to help him.
Meanwhile, they're being pursued by a hitman named Kinney, played by Ned Beatty, who the same year that Ned Beatty made this film, he made Network.
Wow.
Think about that. Network is a...
I'm thinking about
Have
it.
you seen Network?
I have seen Network. It's been a very long time.
What do you think of it?
It's great.
It's a great movie. I feel like maybe we should do a future oeuvre busters on Patty Chayefsky as a writer, not necessarily as a filmmaker.
That'd be
but
interesting,
That'd be
yeah.
very interesting. Anyway, this is a film about interactions. It's about a relationship. It's about a friendship.
About brothers or brotherhood, I should say.
brotherhood.
Yeah.
It definitely is a piece with husbands.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very different role for Falk. He's very in control of his faculties, but then he has some. I feel like Joe Pesci saw this movie. You brought this up, so I would like to not claim credit for it. But you said something to me the other day when we were having brunch.
Oh, as we all want to do.
There's a little where there's a little bit of Joe Pesci in this performance.
Yeah, so the movie begins with, again, Cassavetes making this call to...
So no, he's like sort of
Falk.
holed up in a hotel room in
Yeah.
Philadelphia. I thought this was a New York City movie. It's actually a Philadelphia
Question,
movie.
is this a Hotels.com kind of situation? Airbnb? How do you think you found this place?
It was 1975.
Oh, yeah, those things didn't exist. So he just finds this hotel. He finds himself in it. He calls...
He's hiding out.
Yeah, he's
8
hiding
blocks
out.
away from Dave Resnick's hotel.
Yeah.
Or Dave Resnick's operation.
So then Falk comes over to see him, and they have like this very kind of like intense, obviously conversation. And Cassavetes or Nicky doesn't trust him from the very, very beginning. Kind of like refuses to let him in.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, he kind of says like, "Do I trust you?" Or
they've
like,
known each other a long time.
but you get the impression that they're no longer as tight as they used to be, and they're
Right.
kind of like both like low level like mob.
They're
dudes.
low-level mob guys. I would guess that.
They haven't been made yet.
I would guess that Falk's a little bit higher on the totem pole.
It seems that way. Yeah, it also seems because he's not. You get the impression that Nicky's kind of the fuck up. Which
Yeah, he's
obviously
a
also
perpetual fuck up.
put him in the
right.
situation
He's
that he
married.
was in.
He has a 5-month-old daughter, which was like murderous to
Yeah.
watch his scenes with his daughter.
Yeah, no, it's yeah. And also when you obviously like where the film's going, it's kind of
Yes.
brings it all home. But the scene that you're referring to, as far as like the Joe Pesci scene, so he comes to the hotel room to take care of him, and he keeps complaining that
Stomach hurts.
that his stomach hurts.
Did this make you think of the bathroom scene in Husbands? It made me think
It
of
did.
the bathroom scene in
Yeah.
Husbands.
Well, so there's a lot of discussion in this film about like sickness, or at least Cassavetes
Yeah.
constantly.
It's also a hilarious. There are
sick.
some lines in this movie that are really, really funny.
It
There's a line about graves
Oh,
later
yeah,
on
yeah,
where it's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I don't know, I don't want a grave.
Right.
Like it's a very fun. There's some very funny. Elaine May, comedian
Yeah.
with Mike Nichols. Previous to this film, before she was a filmmaker, she was like a very celebrated comedian.
yeah.
Comedian.
Ooh, comedian.
Comedian.
That's how the French would say, I can believe. Comedian.
Oui.
Mon Dieu.
So a lot of comedy in this film. More comedy than
Dark, yeah,
more,
gallows humor.
but funnier than a Cassavetes film.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're right. I totally forgot about the graveyard scene. But the scene, the Joe Pesci thing, is so that Cassavetes' character Nicky's complaining about his stomach, and then Falk goes downstairs to like the diner.
This is early in the film.
Yeah, very early. And he says to the guy behind the diner, he's like, "Give me some coffee and cream," or he says, "Give me."
There's a long, arduous conversation about like getting the
getting cream.
coffee and the cream that he needs. And eventually, Falk becomes so frustrated he jumps over the counter and beats the shit out of this
of the guy.
very
yeah.
unassuming coffee
But
guy.
It happens like that, and he goes from zero. Well, I mean, like obviously you could tell like he's getting annoyed.
But he's
annoyed,
not. He's nowhere.
But he's nowhere near where he gets, and he like flips the fuck out, and it was very reminiscent of Pesci.
One of my favorite things about
And I
this
didn't
film is
notice
that
they
in the
look a lot alike.
background there's two. They do look a little bit alike.
Yeah.
In the background there's two black women. And they're both kind of like, yikes.
Like, what the hell
just sitting in the background. And it's so deliberate and so smart. And Elaine May knows, like, whatever she's doing with them in the background is very
working.
specific and it's very funny.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know. I thought it was very clever. I sort of like, I was like, oh, there's two very significant moments with people of color in this film.
Yes. Yeah.
One is this, and the other is a scene that comes later.
And I kind of cringed at that scene.
It's an
too.
amazing
Yeah.
scene. It's a truly great scene.
So then, so he goes back to the room. He gives him the cream. Again, there's a lot of really like interesting like care, right? Because he's like taking care of him,
Right.
Even though he's obviously kind of also trying to just like lure him out, in order to like get him in trouble or like to
Right. So
bring him back
Falk
to
is contracted by Dave Resnick. He's trying to. I don't know if he's trying to get him killed, but he's definitely
trying to get him back.
yeah, he's working for him.
Yeah.
Dave Resnick, incidentally, is played by Sanford Meisner. Do you know who Sanford Meisner is?
No.
So Sanford Meisner
Of the New Haven Misers?
of the New Haven Meisners. Sanford Meisner might be one of the most significant acting teachers of the 20th century.
You were saying this. Yeah.
So there's a couple people. Harold Clurman is a what?
I was gonna say Uda Hagen and get the fuck out of
No,
here.
Uda Hagen's a big deal. Uda Hagen, Harold Clurman,
Makes me happy to just say Uda Hagen.
Uda Hagen. Can you stop with the interrupting of the? Just kidding. Okay, so there's a couple of big names in terms of American acting. Uda Hagen, Sanford Meisner, Lee Strasberg. Everyone knows Lee Strasberg. He's in Godfather Part 2. Sanford Meisner's like, if you went to acting school, as I did, Sanford Meisner's the shit. Like you read his book. It's a big deal. He's sort of like this thing. So to see him in a movie for me was like a huge deal. Like I was like, I didn't even really know what Sanford Meisner looked like besides like the cover of his book, So it's just amazing. Like Elaine May got this like champion. I mean, it's very significant to me that Lee Strasberg is in Godfather Part 2.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very big deal. So
What does he play in Godfather Part 2?
he plays Chaim Roth.
Chaim Roth. Yes.
So Lee Strasberg plays Chaim Roth in Godfather Part 2.
2.
And that was a big deal too. Like if you know a little bit about acting, like it was huge. So just anyway, I've never seen
He's a
Sanford
shit,
Meisner in a film before, and I think it's very interesting that these like big names in terms of acting, they weren't necessarily like hugely successful as actors, but like they changed the form forever. So I don't know. It was very exciting. And it's also really cool that Elaine May got Sanford Meisner to be in a movie, and he's only in like one or two scenes.
Yeah, very, very briefly. And not till the end does he like even think of his first appearance, I believe.
Yeah.
So then, Cassavetes, Nicky, and Mikey
leave the apartment
leave
and
the
sort of this
hotel.
begins an odyssey. In the hotel, and this
kind of
begins an odyssey of the night.
Of the night.
They go, they get some beers, they get some food.
Right. And this is kind of like a mob version of Before Sunrise.
So in this scene, that's a good point. In this scene, Falk has set it up so that Ned Betty will call 3 times
At this diner,
so
this cafe.
that Peter Falk, and it's a great storytelling device because we know what's coming because they've had a conversation about it. And however, Cassavetes wants to leave that place and go somewhere else because he's suspicious. So they end up leaving there before Ned Betty gets there, and they end up
At this bar.
at this bar.
Yeah. And this is where there's like a very awkward confrontation.
So this bar that they go to
it's
is
frequented by black people.
yeah, it's a bar for black people, and they go. I think they go in there so Peter Falk can call his wife because Peter Falk has sort of become domesticated.
And there's an interesting conversation they have later about like the relationship that they have with their wives.
How old did you think they were supposed to be in this film?
Oh, look, like in their 40s, clearly.
So to me, as characters, they read much younger, but the actors are older, which I think is interesting.
So you think they're supposed to be like in their 30s?
Yeah. So it's a weird casting. I could be wrong, but they seem like maybe this is part of the point, but they seem like 10 years past where the way they're living in the film is like 10 years younger than their ages. So it's interesting.
Yeah, so Cassavetes starts to flirt with one of the women in the bar.
Who's married,
yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously the husband is not having this.
And the husband is such a well-defined character so quickly. He's just so like, no, dude, stop.
Yeah, well, it's funny that he's definitely like obviously Cassavetes' character in this scene comes across as being like the bad guy.
He's a dick.
Yeah,
I mean, he's truly the most repellent character that John Cassavetes has ever created.
No.
Yes.
Ever?
Who's worse?
Oh shit, that's a very good question.
No one's worse. He's the worst. He's
yeah,
awful. To credit to Elaine May for going where husbands couldn't.
I guess you're right. I'm gonna think about this. And
He's
maybe
disgusting.
Respond. So then, yeah.
Only a woman could create a more depraved man than John Cassavetes could. Like it's, I don't know. I thought about husbands the whole time we were watching this film, and I was like, Elaine May went further than those guys would have gone at any point.
So there's this. So basically, what happens is like Cassavetes is clearly kind of like egging these dudes on, and being kind of like an asshole, And if Falk basically gets him out of the bar and is like, "What the fuck are you doing?" It's like,
well, he almost starts a fight with a black guy, and like he says some problematic stuff. He's a racist.
Yeah. The character is not the nicest character in the world, and it comes across definitely in this scene.
Right.
And this is also kind of like again one of the many like minor kind of asides that happen to them throughout the night. So there's this.
Right.
I forget the scene after this is this. Then they have this, actually there's a funny scene on the bus where.
Well, they get on a bus.
Yeah.
And there's a woman who's like, "You can't smoke on the bus," and John Cassavetes is like, "Fuck you," basically.
Pretty much, and he's just like smoking on the bus.
Do you feel like as an actor, John Cassavetes was sort of like freed by not having to direct a film? Because like he's a celebrated actor. He's won an Academy Award for Dirty Dozen. He's in Rosemary's Baby. Like he made most of his money as an actor. But there's something really liberating watching
it's
him
gotta
just
be.
act.
Oh, I mean for himself. You mean like?
Well, and also for us as an audience, like I feel like, you know, when you've watched as many films about that this guy's made, like there's a certain feeling of like there's something a little liberating.
Yeah.
About like.
I imagine though he must have had like a lot of ideas on the set.
Well, there was this really reductive review I read of this movie that was like, Elaine May tries to make a Cassavetes movie by mismatching the shots and having bad lighting, and I was like, "Fuck you!" Like, it's disgusting.
This is not trying to be a Cassavetes film at all.
I mean, it has things in common in the sheer fact that it casts actors in a John Cassavetes film, but like, it's offensive to say that like she was trying to make a John Cassavetes movie. I mean, Elaine May was like clearly her own voice, and in some ways a much more like deliberate filmmaker than John Cassavetes
Okay, so right
ever
before
was.
we started recording this, we did talk very briefly about this, about like her as a director in relationship to Cassavetes, and obviously I think it's stupid and reductive to be like, oh, well, one person is clearly better than another, but she's clearly a more refined, more restrained director than he is. There's a lot of, let's say, clearly, not that obviously in Cassavetes everything's fucking like chaotic, but there's clearly a lot of planning and a lot of really excellent like execution in a lot of these shots.
That's true.
That you wouldn't get, I think, in a typical
in an early John Cassavetes film. But one thing that is worth noting is that she did do some really unorthodox things. she would leave the camera running after they'd walked off set
Yeah.
because she was like, maybe they'll come back. This film was in
catch
editing for
something.
3 years. Like, her husband had to steal reels from the studio so that
So
they
you could
wouldn't
edit it,
change the
yeah.
film. So,
Has a very interesting history in that kind of
yeah,
sense.
it's a really interesting film in that sense. But it's also just nice to see. I mean, these guys work together a lot. So it's nice to see them just working as opposed to like whatever else must be tied. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to act and direct your own film, but the best John Cassavetes is like the John Cassavetes behaving badly kind of model, like where he's just allowed. Like, I think that guy was not afraid to like indulge his most problematic impulses.
On screen.
And
yeah,
you
yeah.
see even more of it in this film than Husbands, which brings us to maybe the most harrowing scene in the entire Cassavetes catalog, which is the scene where he goes to the home of a woman
that he clearly has
history with. And they sleep together. Well, Falk is in the next room.
Next room.
And he just keeps being, "I love you, baby."
And
And
there's-
it's like so. It's husbands.
And there's no and the next room is putting it lightly
Yeah,
because
like
there's
he's-
no barrier.
It's like being in college and your friend like making out with a chick,
yeah.
like
Or maybe more
fingering
so.
a chick to your right and being like, "Cool, cool, 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 cool,
Like, this
cool."
is not happening.
It's so
This is
uncomfortable.
not happening. And then what makes it even more fucked up is that this woman clearly obviously like has feelings for Nicky.
She's really into Nicky.
She's really into him.
And then he sort of says to Mikey, "Hey, go. You should hook up.
Like,
with
you
her.
should hook up with her."
She'll sleep with anybody."
Yeah, and then he walks over to her and he like starts really creepily hitting on her, and clearly she's not having it. And she flips the fuck out, rightfully so.
She slaps him.
She slaps
and then
him.
he hits her back.
hits her
it's
back.
the really troubling scene.
And she's like, "Get the fuck out of my place."
Right.
They leave.
Right.
And then Falk and Cassavetes have like their final falling out, right? Because
the breakup scene, which
the
is
breakup
an
scene.
amazing scene. It's like a lot of long takes, a lot of twos.
Falk basically says something along the lines of like, "Oh, I feel like you did this on purpose to
and
kind of like
also-
set me up."
Yeah, and also
Like,
like
make a fool of me.
whenever you're with Dave Resnick, who's the mob boss, like you ignore me, like you
Yeah.
don't say hi to me, and it's like it's really I appreciate that Elaine May doesn't. Film made now would kind of like telegraph that stuff, where we'd have like a flashback scene or an early scene where we see these things happen, but like she trusts her audience enough to know that there's like a strained quality of their relationship,
Totally.
and that there's also this history between these two
Yeah.
guys.
And we mentioned it very quickly, but we didn't talk about it. 'Cause surprisingly, we're talking about things out of sequence, right? Where there's the graveyard scene, which is before this, I believe.
Where you find out that Mikey is Jewish.
Yeah. And the graveyard is Nicky's mom buried there?
Nikki's mom is buried there.
And they're like looking for her tombstone.
Right. And it actually, this is going to sound so cliche, but it reminded me of Hamlet a little bit. I just thought about Hamlet.
I was going to say Beckett.
Also Beckett. There's
Just
a
like
lot
the
of Beckett.
clowns, like the
Well,
two
the
of them.
stomach
and, like,
pain
fucking
and all this
stomach
stuff,
pain,
and they're
yeah.
clowns. Yeah, there's definitely that. But
They're
also,
kinda
there's
just,
this
like,
moment
fucking
where
around.
like it's very clear that Mikey is serious about being Jewish.
Yeah.
And he's like trying to say the Kaddish and all these things. He's just like, I don't know. It's a significant. And Falk was Jewish. It just feels significant in terms of like Elaine May building on the reality of these real people.
And what's the line? So like Fox characters like even though I don't believe doesn't mean like I'm gonna be disrespectful.
Well,
in
because
the
he keeps
graveyard.
saying he keeps
'Cause
apologizing as he
Cassavetes
steps on. So there's this line. It's like,
Yeah.
well, who do you keep apologizing to?
yeah, there's nobody here.
And he's like, a grave is a grave.
Yeah.
Well, they're stepping on. Like, that's the same thing. Like, if I was in a cemetery, I would step over. I
Yeah.
wouldn't step on a grave,
Yeah.
you know? But it also speaks to their character, whereas, like, Mikey is a man of a little bit of tradition, whereas Nicky's, like, kind of an asshole.
Without question, yeah.
Right.
And but again, obviously, the have this kind of conversation there about death and mortality, and
Right.
and as you said, like the sickness kind of like motif, or like how Nicky's constantly complaining about being sick and about his stomach, is this kind of very like sickness onto death kind of thing that was also in Husbands a little bit.
So they separate
Separate.
at a certain point in the film. They break up, and then what happens?
Oh, you mean so after the fight they have?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also he smashes Mickey's watch.
Which
Which
was given to him by his father,
by
who
his
passed
father,
away.
yeah.
Fatherless men is such a motif in all these movies. Even Elaine May, I think, uses that to her advantage.
Yeah. And at this point, they split up. Falk finds Ned Beatty's character,
When they sort of search for Cassavetes.
Well, yeah, but then also he turns to him and says, "Squeal like a pig," and there's a really uncomfortable scene. We're not going to go in, right? Where Fox says to him, "Squeal like a pig."
Are you making a Pulp Fiction joke?
Squeal like a pig. No, fucking Deliverance. You didn't see Deliverance?
No, it's not in a long time.
Never mind. So then they
Sorry.
they drive they drive around.
I'm Ty. This is the second episode we've recorded tonight.
They drive around looking for Cassavetes. At some point, they think they find him, but
Right.
it's not him. And Cassavetes goes home
Right.
to talk to his
killed me.
poor
Murdered me. His wife, Jean.
His wife Jean.
And the baby who's 5 months old.
Yeah, and obviously Cassavetes is the terrible husband.
And this is an interesting parallel, or
Nicky,
sort
I
of an
should say.
interesting mirror to the husband scenes. Husband scene
Yeah.
with Ben Gazzara going
Totally.
over to his wife
Yeah.
because the mother-in-law is there.
Yes.
And the wife is kind of like, fuck you, by the end, like sort of his charisma and his charm and his desperation, he's so desperate, sort of it gets to her at the end, and she's like, they end up making out. But he goes into the baby's bedroom, and the baby's asleep. I remember this very, he wakes the baby up, and I'm like, why are you waking a baby up? What's wrong with you?
Don't you want to get some sleep?
But like, he spends the whole film obsessed with his own death.
Without
So he
question.
knows he's going to die.
And he says it constantly, I'm going to die. Yeah, he fears it. That's one great thing about this role is how you can sense his fear.
Yeah, he's so good in this film.
That's the part of the film that like actually like makes him sympathetic. In a certain sense, like you know, like, do you imagine like, oh my God, what must it be like to know that at any given moment, like they're going to find me and they're going to fucking kill me, like no questions asked. And he embodies that really great.
You don't spend most of your time thinking about how you're going to die.
The grim specter of death. I mean, all the time, of course, but I know
Sure.
like death by polar bear.
What?
I mean, that's how I plan on going. Is that weird?
I thought about
Central
the game.
Park Zoo?
I got about the game Primal Rage for a couple of seconds.
Primal
Remember
Rage?
that game?
Wait, fill me in. Is that the
The game where you could play as like different
and
giant
you destroy buildings?
apes. No, that was Rampage.
That was Rampage.
Fucking dumb. Primal Rage was the game where you could play as
Such an
similar
idiot.
characters, but you just beat each other up. I don't think there was any like animal eating. I mean, human eating or anything like that. Any hoodle.
Rampage would get the fuck out.
Whoa.
That's right. I went there.
Should we do Uber Busters on the Rock?
We should, of course.
The film. I mean, the guy,
actor.
not the film.
Yeah.
Even though I would watch the shit out of that film. That's a great Michael Bay film.
You went there, but no,
Yeah,
it
no,
is.
it's a really good.
It's a great
one of the greatest
film.
action films of all time. Beyond a great action film, I think it has.
fucking
I
amazing.
think that film has things to say about like the larger things to say.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a
about
very, like-
Alcatraz.
No, I think it's a very because it's a pro-America garbage. But I think that Ed Harris's character is ultimately right in his point of view about like these men should not be forgotten. They fucking died in Desert Storm for all your bullshit
Yeah.
and for like a needless thing. Like I think that that's no joke.
You weren't laughing? during
No, that movie did it for me. That movie does it for
does it
me.
for me. So then,
How dare
your
you just
best.
move on.
Your
Losers
best.
always whine about their. I got a postcard once from Alcatraz that I flipped it over and it said, "Losers always whine about their best. Winners go home and fuck the prom queen."
Amazing.
Amazing.
But
I
who's
still
it sent
don't-
by?
my
I
friend
don't know.
Kevin.
Oh, okay.
Not Keith.
Not Keith.
Kevin doesn't listen to the podcast. He listened to the first episode and went, "I don't know who John Cassavetes is."
Keith sends me letters that are from and they're like the letters are all cut out from magazines, and it says like, "Soon I will be coming."
Keith sends me custom Weezer T-shirts mostly.
Ba-dum-bum, shh. Private joke. So then, yeah, he goes home. He has this terrible like scene with his family because you know, the sword of Damocles will soon fall upon his head. Am I right? Sword of Damocles. And Falk is hanging out with Resnick,
Right.
and I forgot basically he says something like what does he say, like go home or like relax?
Yeah,
or
go home
don't?
with your wife. Yeah, basically sends him home.
It's like we'll find him.
So throughout the film, Falk's been calling his wife, who's been very like something weird. The baby's up at all hours. The kid's up at all hours of the night.
But Falk
like
Falk also said, Resnick says to Falk, like, oh, we're going to have Beatty drive around your neighborhood looking for him in case he comes looking for you. And doesn't like Falk say something like, don't have him be like too obvious or don't have him do too many loops.
Yeah.
And
Because I think ultimately Falk wants to save his like
save his
oldest friend.
Yeah. And this is where the shit goes down, right?
So Falk goes home, has a long conversation with his wife about a bunch of things. And then Cassavetes
he reads her this book called The Princess Bride very weirdly. And she keeps asking, like, at first she's annoyed, but then she's like, no, actually,
No, I'm
read me
into
some
it.
more.
And then Fred Savage shows up.
Weirdly enough.
I forgot that Peter Falk was in The Princess Bride.
Yeah, it's
until-
it's amazing. It just comes out of nowhere, like, oh my god, it's Peter Falk.
My favorite scene in The Princess Bride is the scene where
any scene with Andre
where
the Giant.
Nicolas Cage says, "Well, it's you. You're the Rocket Man." And Tony, fuck. This joke would be so much better.
Candyman.
Goes like, "I don't like soft ass shit." And then he launches the VX poison rocket out the
I
window.
forgot that was Candyman.
Godspeed, Godspeed.
I said it twice.
Honey, do you want to know how JFK died?
So then
Cassavetes shows up at Falk's
dun,
door,
dun, dun.
knocks on the door,
And now it's like
repeatedly.
the morning.
There's this long, ridiculous, it's just a long
I found this scene
scene.
very touching.
I hated this scene.
Why? Because the brutality of it, because you knew what was happening.
The brutality, boo! Like it just went on forever, and you knew that Betty was gonna drive around the corner. You knew John Cassavetes was gonna get shot. Like it was so.
But like Falk like puts furniture behind it. So basically,
Yeah, because that guy's a piece of shit, and he should die. Like he's awful.
no, I know, but like the brutality of it, of like I'm gonna fucking like all right, that's it, we're done. Like I'm putting all this furniture. Like don't fucking come in.
Well, it's an interesting.
It's a
It's
very
also
tough
an interesting.
scene to
It's a
watch.
little bit. It's a little bit. There's like so one of the things that I think is like not acknowledged. Everyone sits around and talks about how great The Godfather is and Goodfellas.
I was like in this movie.
No, in general, The Godfather, and like Mean Streets, and they're all really great movies. But like this film and Chinese Bookie are sort of unsung classics of like gangster cinema.
Yeah,
Because there's this nice scene where like
it's like The Princess Bride.
oh my god, there's this, and Dick Tracy. There's this whole thing where like it pains Falk to watch his friend die, but like there's not much he can do in terms of put your Android phone away.
Sorry.
No, it's just it's inevitable and tragic, but I also feel like it goes on for way too long.
Yeah, I think it's edited very well.
It's a well edited scene.
Yeah, and I think like I found it brutal in the sense of like because like here everything's on the line. Falk is clearly saying like fuck this guy, I'm done completely and utterly, and I could care less about him. And just like putting the furniture behind the door of like
Right.
you stay out there, you face your execution, you face your death. And yes, he's a piece of shit clearly, but also like the sense of that clearly they were friends for a very long time. They were,
Right.
like brothers, and like that relationship is like the most brutal thing you could do to somebody who used to love is now just be like fuck it.
Yeah,
you're
you
done,
have
you're
to
dead.
go.
And
In order to preserve
and
his
what is-
sanity and his family and
Yeah.
his life.
what does he whisper or something? He whispers something at the very end, and I couldn't quite get
I
it.
didn't get it.
Yeah,
I just
and I played it
hated
2 or 3 times, and I couldn't.
Oh, really? Yeah. I just didn't like that the last shot was like like it doesn't even cut to Falk at the end, I feel like the last shot is like a bloody door.
Ah, is it? I thought it fades to black on Falk.
Does it?
After
Maybe
he
I'm wrong.
whispers the like whatever it is that he whispers in. Can you hear what he said?
I don't know. That sequence didn't feel complete to me for an otherwise like really meticulous film. But I liked it.
I really enjoy this film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's very good. I mean, I think
4 out of 5 staccatos.
It out-Cassavetes at some
Ooh.
points.
At some points, yeah. The back and forth between them.
Well,
is
there's
amazing.
this piece that Nathan Rabin, formerly of the AV Club, wrote, and he was like, "This film is about toxic masculinity." In a really,
I agree with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
But more so like for the Cassavetes character. I mean, what am I saying? The Falk character also. With that scene,
yeah, they're not. Neither one of them
None of them
great,
are great guys.
but it deals with that stuff in a really interesting way. And it might be more harrowing or unflinching than I feel like Elaine can probably examine that in some really, really deep ways
yeah.
that maybe Cassavetes isn't. He's not able probably to look into the abyss, so to speak, in the same way that she kind
Totally.
of does it.
Yeah. No, I agree. But go out and watch this film.
Yeah, I know. I think it's really, really good. And to quote Georg Buchner's Wojciech, "Mankind is an abyss. You can get dizzy just staring in."
God, if I had a nickel for every time I heard that.
Are you a
quote-
Wojciech fan?
Who isn't? Of course.
98% of people that exist on the
Our
planet.
friend Fennis definitely is.
Fennis.
Fennis is definitely.
I'm cutting
a
this out
Wojciech
'cause
fan.
it's too esoteric. No,
Keep that in.
5,
Keep that
many staccatos.
Many staccato. I can appreciate
Many
that.
staccatos to you, friends.
And many staccatos to you, Liam.
I'm George Regopoulos.
And I'm Liam Billingham.
And
am I?
this was
Uber Busters.